and welcome back to the Entertainment Vortex. We are at Brennan Theaters today watching Sicario, Day of Soldado. This is a sequel to Sicario, which came out a couple years ago. It still has the main stars in it. You've got Benicio del Toro, Josh Brolin. Emily Blunt was in the previous movie, not in this one, but the main two characters are there. I actually hadn't seen the first Sicario until last night. I watched the first Sicario specifically to keep it fresh in my mind going into this one. It's a movie I'd always wanted to see, but I had missed it in theaters. We had watched something else that week and didn't review it. And going up to this, I was excited. Watching the trailer for the new movie made me that much more excited to see the original movie because it's so intriguing. First of all, the way they do the trailer with the sound beats is amazing. But second of all, it just seems so interesting what they're doing. This like edge of your seat thriller. So watching the first movie, this is not a review for the first movie, but I enjoyed it quite a bit. So going into today, I had pretty high expectations. I will say that this movie is extremely entertaining if you liked the first movie because it has a very specific style to it. It's a little bit of a slower burn. It's a little bit of a throw a bunch of information at you at once and you're trying to decipher it all at the same time as you're following the movie. It's a very specific type of movie. And I have a feeling that this is going to need to have a specific type of viewer. The more serious viewer. The viewer that's going to be more interested in the dialogue and the details than they are necessarily in the constant action. Because it's definitely not constant action. There is action, and it's amazing, but it's not constant.
Welcome back to the summer of Josh Brolin. He's been in some amazing films already so far this summer. This is a good movie. His performance definitely adds a layer of humor in some of the dark places and also adds some realism. But this is one that definitely brings a darker tone and a little bit more that dark realism of things that could potentially, legitimately happen in real life. Or things that, for all we know, may actually be happening. The other movies that he's been in this summer are definitely more of the fantasy comic book genre. This one is definitely not that.
It's not as slow as the first movie. This is a different director that did this one than the first movie. The first movie had a lot of drawn out landscape shots and slow paced. It was really, really drug out, the first movie was. This one is not at all. This one, while it is a slower paced movie, it does get to the point faster. If that makes sense, kind of in the middle. I know a lot of people are still going to call this a slow movie, but I think it's quite a bit faster paced than the first one. When it comes to the actors, I am blown away by these actors. Benicio del Toro and Josh Brolin were amazing in the first movie. But in this movie, I think Benicio del Toro turned it up to 11. His performance is amazing. Some of the stuff that happens with his character in this movie is crazy. Watching him act this out, it's like a master class in acting, in my opinion. I can't think of another performance I've seen in the last year or so that was that impressive. Except for Isabella Moner. Isabella Moner plays the young girl in the movie, and she was fantastic. There are some scenes in here that are very emotionally intense, very edge of your seat. And the intensity she brought to that role, especially as a young actress, I was blown away. If she does not get some type of an award nod for this, that is a crime. There were scenes in there where what was happening on screen was pretty harrowing, but because of her performance, it made you feel that much more uncomfortable. And that is exactly what it was supposed to do. Her transition from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie was just mind-boggling. I have to say, her and Benicio del Toro carry this movie. Josh Brolin did a good job. There were a couple scenes that he really had to nail it, and he did. But he wasn't really put in any situations the same as those two were put into. So he didn't really have any opportunities to really act his ass off. But these two, man, I am going to be following her in the future. I want to see what she accomplishes, because if this is any indication of her abilities, we're going to see some great things from her.
His character is very entertaining, but when it comes to some of the other characters, he definitely got outperformed in a couple of territories. Specifically, Benicio del Toro, as Nick stated in his review, he put in an excellent performance. Very realistic reactions to things and just so many layers to peel back from that character. Definitely one of the high points for this movie for sure. All that being said, in my opinion, this movie does have some small pacing issues. Being a slower paced film can definitely put you in a weird place as far as what you're expecting on camera. It's one of those things where you can see, influences from things like the Coen Brothers movies and that sort of a thing that kind of influence the way that they shot and paced a movie like this. And you can also see that pretty heavily in the first film as well. Definitely more so in the first film. There aren't a lot of moments where you feel like you're bored or you feel like it's not moving fast enough. To me, there was a specific section of places where it felt like this the most. Without giving too much away, there is I'd say pretty close to a third of the film that's dedicated to a group of coyotes. Now, coyotes are people who ferry people across the border from Mexico to the United States. This section, while it does have its payoffs later, did feel a little weird and out of place. There are some potentials that they may have lost during that section of time if they had potentially chosen a better lead for that section. I'm not sure what the actor's name is. It's a young kid. He just seemed out of place. He just didn't seem like he fit. And that's a problem when you're supposed to be suspending your disbelief during these sections. I mean, it's a movie that's supposed to be based pretty heavily in realism, and it didn't feel very real for me. It's not that his performance was crazy over the top. It was more that it didn't seem like they gave him a lot of direction. It was something where he just seemed kind of blank most of the time. Like his expressions just weren't as vibrant, especially when you're standing up to two Hollywood heavyweights like Josh Brolin and Benicio del Toro. It just left me wanting a little bit more. I think that there's a potential that the build-up from this movie will make a better third act, which I'm perfectly on board for.
So let's talk about the tone and the feel of this movie, because I think that's going to be important for anybody watching this review, not quite sure if they want to see this. It is dark. The tone of this movie is really dark. You are going to see things in this movie that are going to make you feel sick to your stomach, that are going to make you feel uncomfortable. Not necessarily from a gore perspective like you would see in a horror movie, but in a context perspective. You're going to see things that are going to make you want to look away. And I think that's part of the power of this movie, but a lot of people are not going to want to do that. So consider this a warning. If you are someone that doesn't like to be put into uncomfortable situations like that, might be one to skip for you. If you're someone that feeds off of situations like that, be excited about this movie, because it creates situations and it creates emotional spaces that I have yet to experience in a movie in a very, very long time.
The storyline for this, aside from some of those parts with the coyotes, just has you constantly at the edge of your seat. It does, even with what I felt like were stumbles, build a level of tension that just makes you uncomfortable. And that sort of thing is like lightning in a bottle. It's hard to capture. The fact that they were able to do that, even in a movie that I felt wasn't perfect, is definitely something worth taking note of. The scenery that they chose to shoot and the cinematography, the way that they built this tense, almost dystopian world built within our own reality, it shows across on screen really well. It's kind of beautiful in its disarray. I love the way that they were able to kind of continue to capture similar things from the first film, even though it's a different director, kind of, and in my opinion, somewhat of a different direction as well. They're definitely ramping up to something that I feel is going to be bigger than the sum of its parts. That's something that I definitely appreciate. For a movie that had parts that I didn't enjoy, it still did everything it needed to do and left enough questions on the table for me to be excited for the next thing that's coming.
So with all that said, I'm going to give this movie a 9 out of 10. I really enjoyed this movie. As a matter of fact, I enjoyed this movie more than I enjoyed the first movie. And I enjoyed the first movie quite a bit. I feel that the faster pacing in this movie, although like I said, still slow, really lends itself. You're not sitting there on a bunch of establishing shots going, okay, move on, like the first movie did. You're really focusing on the story. And I really enjoyed trying to unravel everything that was happening. And let me tell you, you're not going to guess what happened, because this movie has left turn after left turn after left turn, and that's exactly how I wanted it to be. I hear they're making another one, and I can't wait to see it.
Overall, I'm going to give this movie a 7.5 out of 10. It's just barely not an 8 for me. It's something that, like I said, I'm glad I saw, and I'm really excited for the next thing. It's just if that 1/3 of the movie had been even a little bit better for me, if maybe they had given the actor a little more direction or chosen a different actor in this situation, I would have been way more excited and I would have been way more willing to put this movie on my back and show the rest of the world, you know. But if you're into movies that maybe have a little bit of a slower draw, but also have just great discussions and banter and something that you want to talk about when the movie is over, this movie is for you.
If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. We give you multiple videos every single week. And we have t-shirts available if you're interested in those as well. Those are available down in the description below. We hope you'll follow us into the Vortex. We'll see you next time.